Welcome to everyone who's just joining us. A few more just coming through the waiting room here. Welcome, welcome. Lovely to have you here in this space with us. We are about to kick off a Q&A with the literary agent Lucinda Halpern. And if you've never been to an event with us, well, welcome. My name is Parul. I am the co-founder of the London Writers Salon. We run a community here for writers. We run a number of events, including Writers Out. We just finished another silent writing session. We do these 4 times a day. You're always welcome to join us for them. But after some of these Writers Hours, a couple of times a month, we put the spotlight on an organization or an individual in this ecosystem, this vast literary ecosystem, who does something that might be helpful to us as writers. And today we're exploring the world and the mindset of the literary agent. And so some of the questions we're grappling with today are, well, what does it take to grab a literary agent's attention? How do you craft a query, synopsis, and book proposal that stands out? What are agents really looking for? And so let's find out one literary agent's perspective. And what you can expect from today, we're going to start in just a moment, is I have some questions for Lucinda. If you have any questions at any point, put them in the chat and I'll try to get around to them in the Q&A or at the end. And as you're settling into this Q&A, do let me and let us all know, where are you in the querying journey? Are you just thinking about it? Are you actually in the middle of it? Are you quite far into the process and now feeling a little bit fed up? I'd love to know where you are in that process. And as you're typing that in, let me introduce our guest. Lucinda Halpern is a literary agent with over 15 years of experience. She secured book deals with all the major publishers, and she's the author of Get Signed. It's a book about finding an agent, landing a book deal, and becoming a published author, which she's displaying it so nicely there. We actually interviewed Lucinda on our podcast as well. She represents a range of New York Times and internationally best-selling authors across many categories: business, health, lifestyle, popular science, narrative, nonfiction, memoir, and upmarket fiction. And you can learn more about her. We're going to put some links in the chat on her to access her website, and you can follow her on social media as well. Without further ado, enough of me talking. Lucinda, welcome.
Hello. I was just saying for those entering that Parul has the most soothing and melodic voice, and I've just long been following what your society does, and it's just incredible for writers. And it's such a gift, and it's just a pleasure to be here with all of you. My greatest joy is in educating writers about this mysterious process of publishing. So really thrilled to be here.
So lovely to have you. And it really, it really comes across to me from even the podcast interview we did with you, is that you really care. And I think sometimes when you're on the other side as a writer querying, it's hard to remember that the person does care.
Yeah.
It's a hard-nosed business. It is a business after all, but I really do admire that about you, that comes through in everything that you've done with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
so much.
if I look into the chat, I can see what people are doing. So yeah, Rebecca's hoping to start in the next 3 months. Rosemary's struggling to write a query letter and synopsis. Lika's trying to understand the querying process. Catherine's taking a break after submitting about 20 queries. Leanne has queried about 7 agents revising query. You can see there's a whole range here, but quite a few people are actually steeped in this process right now.
Yeah.
So let's go straight into this.
All right.
Submitting to a literary agent, fiction versus nonfiction.
Yeah.
What should a writer know about what they need to submit? And we're going back to basics.
Sure. Super basic. If you are writing nonfiction, with the exception of memoir, please do not write the entire manuscript first, if your intention is to sign with an agent and get a traditional book deal. For fiction, unfortunately, you cannot just get away with a sample chapter or a partial manuscript. You do have to finish that entire novel, and that is the submission. So that's, always something to start off with, because many people write the manuscript, and I respect that many people have to do that in order to reverse engineer and write a book proposal. But know that in the process of querying, you will not need that full manuscript for nonfiction, and you will need it for fiction. And memoir is one of those, plays the line of both, right? There are agencies like ours that prefer to see proposals so that we can really see the vision and shape it with you. And then there are plenty of agencies that specialize in memoir that want to see the full manuscript.
And what else? There are other things as well. So there's, in terms of the sort of query letter and synopsis, other additions
Other additions to the submission package, you mean? Well, there's
to the manuscript itself.
tell me more what you mean, Pearl.
So just confirming the synopsis, those additionals that.
Right. So the entire package, well, again, it's really going to depend on agency guidelines. So many fiction sort of specialty agencies will require you to do the pitch letter, sample chapters, maybe the entire manuscript, and a synopsis. And they'll sort of make, all sorts of fields for you to fill in. Speaking for ours, we try to make our query form pretty brief, getting right to the point of what we need to know. And that usually involves the attachment of a proposal with your pitch letter or just your pitch letter. So so that for us is the submission package.
Yeah, and a good point that of course every agency will have their own guideline as to what.
Yes.
This is a very broad question. Answer it however you want to. What makes a submission stand out in your inbox?
So I have my whole list of bullet points here, but I wanted to sort of break it down to how I'm looking at a pitch top to bottom. So the first would be a super compelling title that's sort of a showstopper, something that stops me in my tracks. For example, this absolutely beautiful, previously self-published book called Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. When I saw the title in the subject line, I thought, okay, I've got to seize that right away. So many times I say to writers that a great title is half the game. However, lots of creatives are not title people, right? That's just not where they shine. And so in that case, I'm going right to what I call the elevator pitch for the book. What would you tell me about your book in 1 to 2 sentences if we had 2 minutes in an elevator together? And that can be a different equation for fiction or nonfiction, but usually it involves, and I know this question will come up, so I won't get into it too much here, what the comps are for that book, right? That should be included in the elevator pitch to sort of set us up for where this stands in a market. So I'll read that elevator pitch and I will see if there is an idea to be had, something that excites me, something that makes me go, huh, right? And, we hear this as agents all the time. Like when we're talking to editors, they'll say, oh, there will be some audible reaction. So whether we're having that internally or externally, that's what I'm aiming for, to keep reading. If it's nonfiction, I'll often even start with the credentials of the person. And in my book, Get Signed, we define that as 3 different sets of credentials. First, the traditional credentials of MD, PhD, CEO, whatever lettered or sort of, if you're a journalist writing in a topic, those would be what I'm scanning for. That's the traditional sort of credential. But I don't want writers to be discouraged if they do not have that. So we lean on contemporary credentials, which could be any sort of thing you're doing online. It could be anything you're doing in the speaking circuit. Of course, I'm primarily focused on credentials for nonfiction. But for fiction writers, it could be that you've published bylines in several different magazines, or that you've won a short story award, even a contest I've never heard of, any sort of award. It's like claim everything you can in your query letter.
And if you
Yeah,
don't have that, should you
yeah,
be worried and should you be now trying to
no.
send off things to competitions?
So in hoping, I saw some really lovely remarks about those who have read Get Signed in the chat. The entire purpose of that book and why I'm here for writers is to encourage them. Everyone has a strength. Everyone has a weakness. And it's all about getting in front of those weaknesses and those questions we're going to ask with some sort of irresistible hook or strength. So don't worry about it. So now I've talked about the title. Okay, you don't have the great title. You're not really sure about your elevator pitch. You're not quite sure about your credentials. Like, where else do you go next? So I really think that comes about in the magic of what we call a big idea at Lucinda Literary, and that applies to nonfiction and to fiction alike. So in a novel, for instance, if I'm looking for something that stands out in a novel, because I know many people in your audience are writing novels, I want to make sure, by the way, that when I answer questions that they are as universally applicable as possible, but please know that there are different particularities for each of the genres, and I'm going to try to speak to every single one that I can. But in a pitch letter for a novel, I think of it as 2 things. It's not what it's about, it's why we should care. You have very limited real estate in a query letter to talk about what happens in a novel, which means that the characters need to immediately feel memorable. We need to have some sense of a driving plot, and we need to have a beginning, middle, and end. We need some sort of an arc. Next question is going to be, well, do I give away the end? If I'm writing a thriller, if I'm writing something like a fantastic ending, not necessarily. Like, think about what happens in an Amazon description, which is always the best way to think about a query letter and what makes for an effective one. That, in that case, I suggest just the promise of an ending that would be really great. So again, for fiction, again, different equation, but I'm looking for these memorable characters, beginning, middle, and end, a driving plot. I don't want to come away from that, from that few paragraphs and say, what happened in this book? Right? And often there's too much emphasis on the what happened and less like who you are, what the comps are, why this book now, the greater setting of why the time is now for your book. Another way I put it, because I like to experiment with all sorts of terms that make this difficult process accessible, is a pitch is your movie trailer. Pitch is your movie trailer. All agents are reading for the screen. And in this, I mean, in the memoir and the fiction categories, but I would not exclude really great nonfiction, which also sort of has that cinematic appeal. Why is that more and more so the case? Because we are just inundated with free content. And your biggest competitor right now as an author is Netflix. And that's to say nothing of short form content like Instagram or news or YouTube videos. But your biggest contender is Netflix, which means that your pitch and your book, your pitch at least needs to promise something that's as engrossing as a Netflix series. Is it episodic? Is it scenic? Are there characters that we are rooting for and following? So anyway, that is a long way of talking about all of the things that can stand out in a pitch letter, in efforts to give you a lot of different tools to play with rather than feel discouraged about what you don't have. It's about what you do have.
And what stands out in what you're saying is that in both, the pitch is really important, making you understand why you should want to read it,
Yeah.
be entertained by it. And more specifically for nonfiction, the credentials play a slightly bigger role there. But going back to the pitch overall, and I wonder if there are any other tips you have there, just more broadly, because I recognize every genre is different, but just more broadly, if someone's, and I find that writers struggle with this bit the most,
Yeah.
that pitch for their book, what are some techniques they can like practically do to construct
Sure.
that pitch? Is it just kind of reading around, comparing to other back cover copy blurbs?
Yeah, so many different creative things, and some of them I'll try to refresh my memory from writing Get Signed, but a couple that I talk about, well, let's say three that I talk about that I think are very accessible to people. Go to Amazon descriptions of your favorite books. So this again will touch on the comps question. Like, if two books that you love had a baby, this is your book, right? If two books were sitting on a shelf, which would you want to stand between? Which means you're going to those books and you're seeing what they did. Again, the favorite tool of reverse engineering, like what did they do to hook you? That's one way of sort of assessing what practically one can do. There was some great writer, I don't think it was Joan Didion, someone who was like actually manually practicing her hand at writing. Pearl, you'll probably know this, or someone in the room will know this. So if they do, just put it right in the chat and remind us. But someone who was actually manually writing line for line what their favorite author did as a way of forming the muscular memory, the way of actually applying the technique in that very sort of manual fashion. It's like what they teach children about Montessori. So there's that, right? You go to the Amazon description line for line, you say like, what are they doing and how can you apply it? Then there's the go into your favorite bookstore. Ask your bookseller, right? Because they know books better than anyone. What are the books in the genre that are not just like the best sellers, right? Because we all sort of know the best-selling names in our genre, but what were the underdog, unexpected bestsellers? And then they'll tell you why that is. And you look at the book cover, right? And then a third tactic for getting that pitch down, and again, there are just so many, is like verbally practice your elevator pitch. If your tongue is tripping on the words, if someone is like confused by a point, if it's feeling cluttered as you say it, that's a great way. Like we're reading as we hear it in our heads, right? So a great pitch feels conversational, and we want to be able to really distill what you are doing in your one liner, in your statement in a pitch.
Mm. Thank you. Some questions have come through in the chat that I want to
I mean,
bring in here. So Catherine talks about how, when we personalize a query letter, the advice is to try and have read the agent's books. But what's the middle ground there? Because that could take a lot of time.
sure.
How would you approach that, or what advice
Yeah.
would you give the writer?
I love that question, by the way, Perla. I haven't gotten that one yet in podcasts or an interview. So thank you for whoever raised it. I any agent is going to be thrilled if they just get this winning pitch letter, which hopefully I've given you some tactics, but we can talk on and on about winning pitch letters. In that sense, it's not as particular to the individual. But as we were talking about before, if you're sort of feeling modest or weak is not like lacking confidence in any of the areas I've talked about, what's the best way to compensate? Flattery. Make an agent feel like they have done something that you have noticed. And maybe you haven't read the entire book, right? I mean, that would be ideal, but maybe you have familiarized with some of their recent sales on Publishers Marketplace, which is like the number one tool I recommend that writers have who want to break in. Maybe you've just looked up their websites and you're able to just speak to that. Maybe there's a personal connection you have with that agent, right? So any way that you can make someone feel seen and validated in what they're doing and why you are a fit for their list is great. But it's not a deal breaker if you don't. I'm just first to tell you.
Thank you. Let's see. Someone asks around, and this comes up a lot, social media.
Mm,
How important is it to have a big social media following or network, both for fiction and nonfiction, in your
yeah.
opinion?
So getting back to those credentials as well as the genres, first for fiction writers, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's a nice to have. It's not an essential. And so there's so many fiction writers who are just like, how many Instagram followers? It's wonderful if you have them, but if you don't, what are the other ways that you can prove that there is a robust audience for your book? And if that isn't that you've published before in magazines or won awards or, literary journals, then it's probably about the comps. It's probably about your reach more than the existing audience you have. But there's so many ways, and I'll get to nonfiction in a second because it's a different animal, but there are so many ways in which writers can just enjoy being writers and don't actually have to be marketers or salespeople in the way that's so uncomfortable for many creatives. What they get to do is write, like for a Substack or newsletter or blog, um, road test. From all my stuff that I talk a lot about the importance of road testing. And you can do that thing you love to do, which is write, to get out and find your audience. And that becomes part of your contemporary credentials as a fiction writer or memoirist. For nonfiction authors, those who have those traditional credentials and are writing expert-driven nonfiction, so doctors and PhDs and journalists, like that actually can be all you need. A social following in those cases is a nice thing. But for those who are writing a self-help book or an inspirational or mind, body, spirit, or oftentimes a memoir, again, being a different sort of binary, binary beast, then you're really going to have some, existing level of a great following. Like something I encourage writers to consider is the power and the beauty of a website that you get to create and curate yourself in terms of what you want agents and industry professionals and ultimately readers to see about you and learn about you. You only have so much in a pitch letter, but you have a lot of space to expand in a website and even an appealing photo of who you are. Like I always talk about one person who is just sort of in her coffee with glasses and a messy sprawl of papers. And I was like, I love that. She just seems like someone I'd love to get to know, right? So a website can do wonders for establishing your authority. What you do not want is for an agent. What's the first thing we do if we're wanting to date someone? Never mind marry them. We Google them. This is a marriage. So if I pick up your pitch and I Google you and you are invisible, that's going to be a problem. I'm just not, there's no way I can do that. But it doesn't mean that it's a deal breaker. It means that it puts all the pressure on your writing, all the pressure on your writing. So that's what I have to say about social media.
Thank you. It's really helpful to get that perspective. And I mean, you're sort of, I feel like you're putting a spotlight on the fact that the agent is looking at you holistically. Of course, they want a great pitch and a story, but they want somebody that they would like to work with, whose personality comes out a little bit, which is how we present ourselves if we go dating, right? We try and
Exactly.
present a holistic view of what we're interested in and what we're like.
And focus, Pearl, before your next question, please focus on engagement, because the numbers take years to build. But what publishers are actually most interested in is engagement. So if you have a small email list, and by the way, small would be more like 2,000, few thousand, right? Hundreds, I'd say, like, you need to keep building before you're going out to agents and publishers if you're writing expert-driven nonfiction. But if you have in the few thousands, you could say my open rate is X, or all of these people have bought a course from me, or they've, showed up to my events before, and you're really proving that engagement. So even lower social media followings, my editor contacts are looking for where are all the comments, where's the trust that's being built, right?
Right.
How are they dispersing their idea? Yeah.
There's a question here around the synopsis and this. Sometimes so Sabrina asks or says, sometimes the guidelines around the length of a synopsis are too broad. It can be anything from 250 words to 1 page double spaced. Now, obviously, there are some websites that might detail it, but if they don't, if they just say provide a synopsis, what would you suggest someone uploads? 1 page, 2 pages?
So yes, for these query, for literary fiction specific or genre fiction specific, I do get a lot of questions about synopsis. And I guess the way I'd answer that, because we don't specialize in, we do love fiction, but we don't require a synopsis for our query portal, is please worry less about the length. Like if you're at 201 words, right? I say the same about genre. The best way to think about that is not to be so like freaked out that you're going to make a mistake, but rather go with, you're looking at the agent that you love and want to be with, and you're seeing what they identify, how they classify their books. Well, suddenly you're writing a self-help memoir, right? You were confused. Am I writing self-help? Am I writing memoir? But suddenly you're writing that. So I would think less about these really specific details and more about how am I just getting the person into a conversation? That's all you need to do right now, is get an agent requesting your material.
It's funny, every single time I ask an agent about synopsis, and this in the UK, I've done this a lot in person, always they say to me, that's the bit I care about the least.
Yes.
They seem to, they're like, please, please, because I remember asking one agent, I was like, would you be up for, running a masterclass? She's like, I could, but like, honestly, it doesn't matter as much to me.
It doesn't, because we were talking before, just to reflect back about, like, does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Does it go like this? Is there an arc? Is there growth? Is there transformation? Are these characters that we've, already relate to, which you really can. Pearl, I'm sure we've all felt this in reading a pitch or an Amazon description. It's like, what a cool character. That's my sister-in-law right there. You have that personal connection right away. So there's a lot that does. And then those tinier details, like the right agent's going to want to shape that with you. So you're not choosing your jacket description right now.
Great, thank you. There's a ton of questions coming through. Let's go
Okay.
through them all. Recency of comps has come up before, and Leanne asks us again, how important is that? I've heard 3 years, but every year that goes by, my comps are falling off that list. I've heard 3 to 7. 7 is like the max. Do you have a sense? How old
I
can your
do.
comps be?
Yeah. So now my contacts are saying 2 years and less, but here's the thing. They are running their own comps research. So even if you tell them that you're the next Brene Brown, they're like, wonderful. Now I'm going to go and see what are the books that actually look a lot like this, which is a combination of, well, it can be so many things, right? It can be the themes, it can be the genre, it can be the author's profile, right? So if you're comping to, which is, by the way, we talk about it, like you're comping to Brene Brown, and you're not a PhD running a research study, I'm not sure that that's going to be an applicable comp for you, because the profile is a part of this comparison as well. So yes, you're aiming for 2 to 5 years, but if you wanted to reinvent a classic, I think that's perfectly okay. Or if you even want to name, because I always say, like, this is a Hollywood business. It's a lookalike business where people actually get very excited about the big bestsellers, the name books that we all know of. But you have to be prepared to talk about why yours is slightly different enough, why it expands on a popular interest that wasn't covered in that major blockbuster book. And so that's how I get a lot of sort of resistance from writers around, but my book is a much more, especially if they're older, it's a lot more like this book I read in 1952. And if you want to say that, then you have to say why the audience wants something like that now that is slightly different, right? So it's just being really sort of strategic, for lack of a better word, and how you use comps, not which you used in particular.
That's really helpful framing, actually, to think that why the comps are restricted. That if you go back 20 years or 10 years, there's the agent or the editor might be wondering, worrying, who is that audience? That audience is now past, or the audience is
Right,
shifted in taste.
right. I mean, I'll give you an example. I don't know if anyone in this room is writing business books, but we do a lot of those. And this book, which is a massive bestseller for us, probably our biggest bestseller on the list right now, Buy Back Your Time. When Dan came to us, he said, um, I'm writing the E-Myth for the next generation of tech entrepreneurs. And I was like, oh, okay. So E-Myth, for those who have, are business nerds like me, was a foundational book, that teaches people how to change their thinking about delegation, how they lead businesses. And when I thought, oh, okay, like that book must be 20 years old. But the time is now because people are more burnt out than ever before in our remote world, in our oversubscribed world. And so he made a beautiful case for why that should be his comp.
Great, thank you. Um, so there's some sort of broader questions, and I'm sure you'll have heard similar worries before. Um,
Well, as you're going through, I just want to touch back and make sure I answered that comprehensively. I'm seeing Catherine's question. So if you're saying something like the YA books that I'm thinking of are Traveling Pants, John Green, and Gossip Girl, okay, I wouldn't date all of the comps. So if you're going to bring in an older classic that we all know, then I do want you to choose at least one to create that, right, that X meets Y equation. I want you to avoid choosing too much older comps. So I think that's an important sort of uh, like departure from, from what I was saying a moment ago, that there is this like pivot you need to think about.
Yeah, and I guess an interesting thing, because obviously I've been an editor in a publishing house and a literary scout, so I've been in this world looking at submissions. While those are best-selling YA books, there will be ones that we'll be a lot more aware of that we're actually working with day to day, and those are the ones that we're thinking of when we're thinking about buying, not necessarily comparing it to the older titles.
Yes.
So there will be more recent titles. Those are definitely amazing classics, but there are best-selling YA books today that could also
So
be.
here's something I've never said before that I think would be very strategic. What I've learned in the last few months of selling books, right? You can get an editor very excited based on the success that they have had with a similar title. And if you can go to publisher websites, like the ones that you want to be published by, then you can see like what are the books in the category that they have been really successful with. So many times a buying decision by a publisher, which of course influences our acquisition decisions as agents, is based almost purely on the fact that this is a lookalike book to something they have successfully published. Well, guess what? Not all publishers, not all agents have had the same experience, which means that you're really, again, going for that fit of, okay, like you've had success with this is a win-win for you. And so if you wanted to just play it like two-step, play the movie, as my father said, if you wanted to think about what are the primary publishers that an agent has or is doing deals with, you're seeing those on Publishers Marketplace or on their website, you might actually use comps that are within the wheelhouses of the publishers they're selling to. get them really excited about that. So I just thought of that. I know I don't want to get
Another
too
level of research. I mean,
complicated.
right, it's another level of research if you wanted
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Just going back quickly to the website, you talked about having a website and that acting as a place where agents or publishers could look you up. I'm assuming that Substack comes under that. Will suffice? Will be
Yeah,
sufficient?
yeah, I heard that. And yes, I think anything, I mean, absolutely, if they can jump into your Substack and see something, a little bit of the trickiness with Substack is that you have to enter your email to start seeing what's there. Am I correct about that? Like you can't just jump onto someone's Substack and see all the articles they've written.
You can have.
Can?
I'm trying to remember because I'm pretty sure I've scanned people's Substacks without putting my email address in.
Okay.
But
Okay, good.
maybe you wouldn't get the full scope of their.
Yeah. I'm going to test it out after so I know for
Ah,
sure.
actually,
But
Tracy says you can if the content is free, so it depends.
right. Okay. So it's a good place again to be. I mean, I really encourage it. I think a lot of agents are scouting there or sort of seeing the breadth of how you can write, the range of what you can write. I think it's a great place to be. Does it sub in for a website? That's fine. I don't want to be I don't want to be too rigorous about what the rules are because it's sort of the whole book of Get Signed is like throw away all the rules and create your own. So I think that that can be great. Point is have visibility on Google. So if I Google you and you have a Substack and it's very clear like what you're offering to readers, what you write about, I think that can be perfectly fine.
So the general concept still holds. Be
Yeah.
available, have more
Yeah.
information about how you do it is it could be a YouTube channel.
Right. But going back to engagement, if you are in the process of querying agents or you have agents for selling your book, you should be enlisting your army of fans to be engaging with you, posting about you, engaging with you so that everyone can see that you're this known entity that has an audience.
Yeah. So there's a question here around response rates.
Hmm.
Really, it's a broader question here around. So Julie asks, what kind of query response rate should one expect for a non-fiction pitch to judge whether you've delivered a good pitch letter? Now,
Ooh,
stepping back, this is actually a question around how do I know if what I've delivered, whether it's for fiction or non-fiction, Julie, forgive me for expanding this. How do I know if it's successful?
yeah,
How
yeah.
how how many people, how many agents should be responding to me for me to think it's successful? I'm guessing this
Oh
is a difficult
gosh.
one to answer.
Yeah, this is a good this I wish I had a magic number on this. I would say the first thing I do to really try to measure this is to go quite small in your agent submission list. So maybe go to about 10 agents, say, and see if your pitch is even getting responded to at all. Like even a rejection is a win. One of the editors I interviewed for Get Signed said, a rejection is a win. It means they paid attention. It means they took the time to respond. So that's the first win. The second would be that they actually request your pitch. Then it was successful. Like that's the first measure of success. And then the third would be they've read your manuscript and they've said they've made you an offer of representation. So if you're going to this small list, you have a way to gauge, okay, I heard from 2 out of 10 agents. You know what? That's not bad. And those reactions were requests for the manuscript. At that point, in the shoes of a writer, I might be going to more agents. If I've heard crickets from 10 people, I'd want to go back to the pitch to make sure that it's really working.
Right. So yeah,
Someone's
that's
winning. Angie's winning. 5 rejections so far. I love it. People are rejecting. I hope we're going to get to follow up though, because that's important to know for rejections and like how you
yeah.
respond.
So maybe we yeah, let's stay on the subject then. There are other
Yeah.
questions too, but
Yeah.
so sticking on the submission process and you've sent some out and you haven't had a response, when can I chase? And how
Yeah.
often? How many times can I chase
Yeah.
without
So,
annoying you?
so, so in Get Signed, I talk about the 4 types of writers who get book deals. And the crusader is a relentless chaser. And I am a crusader through and through. So I admire crusaders. And they will find 7 different ways into your inbox. So, I mean, this is something else. Like, you can't just rely on the slush pile. I mean, you'd be a fool. You'd be a fool just to rely on a slush pile. I'm sorry. I'm saying something that's going to get me in trouble later. People are going to be like tweeting, she said the slush pile, you can't just rely on it. But
Well,
it's
no,
true.
then they might try and apply this to you, Lucinda.
Apply anything you want. If you, if it's if you have a story that is a fit for our list, we are going to give that serious consideration. So try us every which way. We don't have the time to respond to everyone. Like many agents, we will say on our website, we cannot get back to you if we are not interested, but we will get back to you if we are. So I departed there to say that you can't just rely on the slush pile. So the follow-up, I want you to chase effectively, which means that say in 2 weeks' time for a nonfiction pitch, if you really want to be nice, 4 weeks' time. This means stepping into your future self as an author, like really having the confidence. What's the worst that they can do? Just not get back to you? So let's give it about a month for everyone, right? Because I would say 2 weeks for nonfiction, but I'm ambitious in that way. 6 weeks for fiction. So let's just say everyone here has a deadline of 1 month from when they query to follow up with that agent that you really want, and do something effective with the follow-up, not just, confirming this landed. Like that's the minimum that I'm encouraging people to do. But maybe you can say something like, my article just got published in Y, see my essay, or my social media I always say in a pitch, like, tell us something that Google will not, right? Because if we like you, we're going to Google you. So if you didn't take that opportunity in your pitch, now's a perfect time to do it again. The other thing is that it probably missed us the first time. Maybe you have a much stronger title now or a much stronger pitch. You could submit that anew, and maybe you're humble enough to say, you know what, this is a pitch, and at the very bottom in the fine print you say, you might have seen this before. Who cares? You think our agent's going to be angry if you're pitching them twice if they never responded the first time? So I just think there is no limit to how creative you can be with follow-up. And with that said, I don't know if I would follow up more than twice with an agent if you don't hear back. Right?
But you said there are lots of ways in which you would encourage people to be
Yeah,
creative in
creative. Yeah.
submitting. So if I were to submit via email, maybe I then change my manuscript a little bit and I resubmit it and I say, hey, by the way, I've made some incredible changes. Look forward to hearing from you. And then I also go on Twitter or X and DM you. And then I go on Instagram and message you. Am I
Yeah.
pushing?
So good. I'm glad you're grilling me on this, because I think, I don't want people to I want to get really granular about this one. This is one where we do want to get granular. So I don't think you're going to attack them on all 7 platforms at the same time, but you should make sure that you're following them on social media so that they're now seeing your name, right? I'm going to use Christy Rich because I know her. Christy follows us. She engages with us. It's so wonderful. I see her name pop up, pop up, pop up. Well, now it's in my inbox. So I'm like, I already know this person from social media. Now she's gotten a connection to an author of ours, which there are plenty of ways to do that. And the author is writing. And I know this wonderful writer, Christy Rich. You should really give her a chance. Okay, well, by the 3rd time or the 5th time, we've seen the name enough through these different ways that we know that we need to somehow be in a conversation, look at the pitch, pick up the manuscript, whatever it is. So that's how I would do it. Not all at once, but make sure you're on that person's radar generally.
Thank you. Let's talk about geography. So Rebecca asks, geographically, how can we know which agents would be best for us to pitch to? I'm Irish living in the Netherlands, and I'm considering Irish and UK agents, even though I don't live there because my book is in English.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the question of across the pond. If I'm UK based, can I submit to you as a US agent? What considerations should we have around this?
Yeah. I can mention a Crusader client of ours in a minute who really did this very inventively. So I get this a lot. We have a lot of international writers in our coaching program. So this is a fun one in a way. If you are writing a book that is already in English, and who should you take it to? I really say the UK is going to be your best bet, right? Because second to New York, I would say UK publishers and agents it's a pretty vibrant publishing market. I'm trying to think, is that actually the second biggest market? It probably is. So if you are based in Europe, I'd go to agents in the UK and you'd query them just like American ones. I'd use that as your first sort of, not guinea pig, but, place to sort of figure out, do you need to be calibrating this a bit if you wish to go to American agents later? Instead of slushing American, Australian, Irish, and UK agents all at once. So take like a small data set and see where you can get with a UK agent. Um, that's what I would say to this lovely Irish woman asking. I think that, ultimately in finding a US agent, because of course we get this a lot, I think that I should get a US publisher. So that's why I'm querying you, right? This belongs as an American book. The first question we're going to ask is, what's the American audience? And this comes back to, what's your platform? Like, what sort of visibility do you have with Americans? If that's not evident in our Google search, you have to tell us in the pitch. Or there's a British author just like you writing a similar book who's had this vast success in the American market, which makes you someone that we should look at. So this applies the other way around. If you're an American writer, like we work with the UK co-agent, and we often will get rejections on our books. So it happens, agents get rejections too, because they will say this book is too American, or we don't see enough of a UK audience. Tell us more. Does she have one? So it applies both ways.
Thank you. Karen asks whether you think it would be appropriate to pitch two ideas at once to an agent when seeking representation for nonfiction, or is it best to start with one book?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. We have that question quite a bit. I say keep it singular, keep it focused on the book that is right for that agent. If you want to do a little A/B testing, I told you, being a business nerd, I think this is a great approach. Take your YA novel to 10 agents, take your memoir to 10 others, and see who is getting most excited. But don't talk about all of the different books. A series would be different. If you're writing a fiction series, agents and publishers love series appeal, but that becomes a matter of like, how much do you want to tell them about about book 1, 2, 3, and 4? Remember that no one is going to buy book 4 if they haven't bought book 1. So you've really got to make that hard pitch for why book 1 should exist, no matter what category you're writing in. And then when you're on the phone with an agent, guess what? We love to have one of your questions, Pearl, was like, what's the it factor for authors? Like, how do you know when you see one? What's the spark? And one of them is that they have the ability to be prolific, that they're prolific ideators, that they're going to write more books. And that's something you can tell us when we're in a conversation.
Right, right. Because you want to build a career. I mean, every editor I've ever spoken to would love to discover the next
Yeah.
writer who they can cherish and grow.
Yes.
Just a bit of a time check. We probably have another 15 minutes left to take us to the top of the hour. So it's quite a few questions still. And I have the option, Lucinda, if you wanted to, I do have a couple of query letters if you wanted to show us how you apply it live, but we also have plenty of questions, so we can
I
stick.
mean, yeah, I was saying too that maybe we do it next time. I'm happy to be put on the spot with anything, but let me have a little more prep on that. I
We have
love dissecting
tons
a
of
query
questions.
letter.
Yeah,
Yeah, questions are great. Questions are great. And even if there aren't questions, I can answer ones I get all the time. So,
yeah, we have no shortage of questions right now.
okay, good.
So Angie wants to know whether there's a need to have a completed manuscript if writing prescriptive nonfiction.
So, no, Angie, you do not, and I would not recommend that you have a completed manuscript. You should work on a book proposal. And if you want, I'm so tempted to put it in the chat, but we have all sorts of like free resources we offer on our website. Somewhere we must have a book proposal template, but very briefly, do you want me to write this in the chat so everyone sees it? It is kind of a little complicated, but it's an overview. Do you mind, Pearl, if
Yeah,
I just write in
go
the
for it.
chat?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's an overview
And in
slash.
this case, Angie's just had her proposal requested, her manuscript
Oh,
requested. So
oh,
she's done the full proposal, but it's been requested. That's
I see.
interesting.
So Angie has had a request for the full manuscript.
Yeah,
I'm
it looks like
wondering,
it. Yeah.
and this is self-help prescriptive. Oh, interesting. Well, in that case, Angie, if you've already started down that path, then you don't need to reinvent and go back and do a book proposal. But I've never heard of an agent requesting a manuscript, the entirety of the manuscript rather than a book proposal. So for those interested, um, these are live New York sirens, everyone. Overview, intro, bio, comps, a TOC, right? Editors and agents want to scan, okay, do these titles do these chapters have compelling titles? Do they seem distinct? Is there some level of
So
transformation?
TOC, table of contents. Yeah.
Yes, the TOC. I'm a slow typer as I talk. Overview, intro, biocoms, TOC, chapter summaries can be brief, and sample chapter or chapters. And all of this we're aiming to be, oh, of course, I forgot something important, marketing. So I'm giving a free book proposal webinar at the end of May. So I know that it's a whole different, that's
We'll share that link with
yeah,
everyone.
that's through Lucinda Literary, but it is sort of, it's like an expansion of the pitch in a way. So you always want to make sure that your pitch is bringing all of your best highlights from the book proposal into the pitch letter. So it's an art and a science.
Right, it certainly sounds like it. And going back to Angie, Angie's just shared
Yeah.
the message that Angie got from the agent saying, I've
Oh,
read your query and found it interesting. Please follow the instructions to upload your full manuscript. Is this the right time to go back and say, actually, at this point, it's a proposal? Are you willing? Is it okay for us to discuss this a bit further? I wasn't expecting to be open. I wasn't expecting to have to write it at this stage.
yeah. I'm trying to think if there might be a way to say that last line. But yes, I love the idea of I have a book proposal to share and I'm at work on the manuscript, or the manuscript is partially complete, right? So if they are excited, they'll be thrilled to look at a book proposal.
Yeah, and that what's I mean, I don't think there's a single agent I've ever spoken to who's said that they would want a full manuscript for a non-fiction
I've
big.
never heard it either, so it's
Never
new
heard.
to me.
I wonder if there's a no, there's not a confusion because the agent did actually say non-fiction proposal.
Yeah,
So maybe just go back, Angie, with what Lucinda said.
yeah, I like the idea of just I have a proposal and a partially complete manuscript. Would you like me to send you the proposal? Boom.
Yeah. So they've already. Oh yeah. So you've got the query, but yes, and the proposal. Great.
Here's
All
the
right.
other thing about book proposals, if I may. I would say that the vast majority of writers who are getting agents today, any genre, they are working with outside editors or what we call book collaborators. So I didn't share this link with you, Pearl, but we have this like stable of fabulous, trained, seasoned book collaborators who have gotten our authors and other authors like 6 to 7 figure deals with major publishers, and they bring all of those connections and all of that experience. For fiction, there are plenty of outside editors who will work with you in the same capacity. The market is such now that so much has to be pre-baked. Like I say at my agency for fiction, it used to be 90% or 88%. Now I tell our interns and assistants, like, I want this 95% ready to sell as a novel. That's a high bar. And of course, you're not going to, I mean, people will say, well, what does that mean? What is 95%? But what it means is it's probably been professionally edited already and maybe several times over. Um,
Is there a conflict of interest as a literary agent to offer editorial services? So like to make sure, because people
so
obviously might come to you because they think they'll get a deal, but that's not the case, right? These are separate services.
This is separate. So these are ghostwriters and collaborators that we represent as writers. So they're not actually paying agents to do these editorial services. They are paying writers that we represent. Does that make sense? Like these are actually clients of the agency who have the skill of doing book
Right.
proposals for
So
authors
they
or
can
editors.
help, right? So they're offering their
Exactly.
services. You're just connecting
Exactly.
your authors together, potential authors.
Yes.
Exist.
Yes. But by the way, with agents who do that, I would say that the agency guidelines have fast evolved, have really changed since the pandemic. And agencies like ours are doing so many different innovative things that were never before allowed in the industry. And, pay attention to sort of like what service is actually right for you. And if you have questions, if you're in a conversation with an agent, ask the questions. Say, I've not heard this before. Like, tell me more, just as you did, for like, tell me more about how this works. It's an interview for you too. A lot of writers forget that. They sign up on the dotted line, they don't do a thorough interview.
And you have, so on your website, we can find if someone wants to, someone's asking, do you have editors who can work with a fiction writer?
Yeah.
This is all on your website. We'll put a link in. Tracy's here in the chat. She'll put a link in to your
Okay,
website.
sure. Send it.
Um, I'm going to just double check there's nothing I've missed because there's some really good questions coming through.
Seeing trade.
Um, but length of book we've kind of touched upon, but I'd love to just go back into that. Um, so this is a literary crime thriller, multi-layered, with a length of 110,000 plus be an automatic decline by an agent.
A literary thriller, 110,000 words.
Yeah, so if it's that and above, is that an absolute no-no or is that
Yeah.
okay?
So this is all inspiring me to do a post from right out of this. Like there's a recurrence here that is frequent with new writers of the word count for the query, for the manuscript. Nothing is a death sentence here in terms of these finer details. It's just hook them with what's going to excite them, and they can work with you on editing it down. Will I say that the market today, attention spans being what they are, that it is a shorter the better, but for certain books, not. There are certain books that people want to lose themselves in, have many pages, feel very weighty. So I really would just focus, like, don't focus on these smaller points.
There are
Everyone
deal
has
breakers, right?
weaknesses.
There are some things that are deal breakers and there are some things that are not. And these guidelines, I guess, if you ask someone what they would actually like to receive in their inbox, they'll have their rough rules. But I imagine there's certain books, from everything I've heard from agents, they'll be like, "Well, I love this book," so they'll make it.
Yeah,
There'll always be exceptions to every rule that they put out there.
exactly.
Um, so Eileen asked a question about, I used to work in the film industry, got to edit a Dolly Parton movie, and only got into it because I wanted to be an author that directs her books into films. Should I mention this in my query letter as a career goal?
No, I don't think you should. And again, you feel free to take just my one opinion and do whatever feels right to you. I'm all about honoring what you want to do. However, what's important for this agent to know is what you're doing now, what this is, what is in existence, not what is past, not what is future. Like, let us envision the future. Let us ask about the past. Right now, we're focusing on the present. What are you pitching? How does your expertise, your credentials apply? So I think that goes in the general sort of like conversation of, I have so many other books to talk about. That should be something that you talk about maybe on the phone if it comes up. But right now it's about this particular work. And frankly, this is also a job application. It's not really about your goals so much as the business fit. I always say the whole exercise of writing a book needs to be you oriented, as in the reader, not you as in the author, what you wish to do. And never is this more a trap than for memoir writers, right?
Mm.
So
It makes sense to me. Like and I guess earlier we've spoken about showing your personality, and there may be other places to showcase that. So if you had an article, if you wrote an article about that, about your sort of dreams of directing films, I'm sure that's really interesting. But
perfect idea.
what you're suggesting is within that very short condensed space, maybe unless there's nothing else to say, it feels like there may be you might give priority to other things that you do.
Yeah. What are the essentials? I want to pull up for you so this is page 129 of Get Signed, and I'm just going to read because this is one of your questions, like what we call the anatomy of a query letter, right? And the idea is no matter what submission form you are seeing, we are all looking for the same things. And so what I say is a personal introduction. That could be a line. Hey, Lucinda, I saw, not hey, Lucinda, but, but hi, Lucinda, dear Lucinda. I saw your sale on Publishers Marketplace or your book I loved, whatever. Then the title. And again, go in the order that leads with your strengths. The genre. I say it's an SAT test. You can afford to leave it blank. You can afford to get it wrong. You can't afford to leave it blank. The elevator pitch, like what this book is in a sentence. Remember that not only do agents have to say that verbally to editors, if you're still an old school phone call person like me, but editors have to be salespeople who get in front of these entire editorial boards and pitch this book concisely in 2 sentences. So don't have us do the homework. You do it and you practice it in advance and you hone it until it's really, really crystal clear because it's difficult. Credentials or platform, if you have it. Comms, I would say absolutely required. The number of misses, like this is surprising because after Get Signed, the level of queries that I'm seeing have improved so drastically. But if there's one thing you don't want to miss in your letter, it's comps. I think people are still too scared to identify as either someone that they is so celebrated and so famous, or more often I hear, well, my book just isn't exactly like that.
Right.
My book is totally unique. And it's like, well, yes, but no, it has
Yeah.
to go on a shelf somewhere.
It's like
So,
I always think about when we recommend books to our friends, and they'll say, "Well, why do you love
right.
it?" Like, "Oh my God, do you know that book you read?" Well, if you
Yes.
like, which husband?
Yes. Yes. And something else about comps that people have recently found like really revelatory. I don't believe in them just being books. In fact, I steer authors toward using a very popular Netflix series
That was a
or
question in the
movie or
chat as well. At how
podcast.
broad can we
Yeah.
go in terms of other
Go
media?
broad. Media is everywhere. Editors are versed in all media. What we really want is the popular appetite, the consumer appetite for the themes in the book. So there's comps, and then there's what I call the wow factor, differentiation. So in Get Signed, I have a chapter on decide your differentiator. This is an incredibly important piece. This is what agents have to do day in and day out. It's how is this different? How is it similar but different? And it has to be really apparent at the pitch level, not once we request your proposal and we're getting into page 47 of your comms section, but rather these are the popular books and here's why mine's different. And then finally, I say that you need a call to action. I wish I could also just like copy and paste this, but Pearl, you have it if anyone wants
Yeah,
it.
get,
But
get us.
it's
I
not,
mean, well, also the book is,
or just take them out, yeah. But
it's a good book to buy. We'll
but
put a link in the
closing
chat.
with the call to action, again, I'm a crusader, so I'm an urgent person. I'm a New Yorker. It's like all about like, let's move on this, guys. Let's go. Right. So can you close with something that lends to a next step, not just to let me know if you'd like to see the proposal or I've attached a few chapters. And I know next you're going to ask me for examples, but it's almost, this is where you get to be people, use your personality, maybe use the news of the day. For instance, I'm representing a book I'm about to go out with called How to Talk to Your Doctor. It's about women's advocacy in healthcare. And this is urgent. Like there are laws being passed as we speak. There's funding being yanked as we speak. That is a perfectly timely way to end a letter, to make someone part of the mission and the message. So that would be one tactic you could choose. Another would be very simply like you have to be authentic here and accurate, but my manuscript is with a small list of agents that I thought were suited to this, right? Everyone loves to be in a small selective group. Or I've submitted this widely and I've already received 50% request, 10 requests. That also makes us want to leap into something. So there are all sorts of tools you can use than the passive ending that doesn't elicit a question.
So I mean, what I'm taking away from this is, if possible, if you have that at your disposal, try and bring in a sort of stronger call to action that's either tied to latest news, uh, other people wanting your manuscript, or some
Yes.
timely factor.
Yes. Or even if you want to do it as the request proposal, make it a question so they sort of have to respond. Psychologically, if a question, they have to respond. So let me know if you want the proposal is different from would you like to see the proposal, which is what we use in our submission letters.
Got it. Wonderful. Well, we still have some questions outstanding, but we are at time. So I think this might be a good time to wrap. So I'm really sorry if we didn't get around to your questions, but we will bring Lucinda back for more of these Q&As. Lucinda, there's so many questions we could keep talking to you about. You have a great book that answers some of these questions. You have some great courses and coaching available. We're pointing to all of that, and a masterclass coming up. It's all in the chat there. But thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your
Thank
honesty.
you. I wish I could stay on. You're the busy one. You're leading this all day and it's just magnificent. And I
If you
love
have
talking.
time, I'm happy to take a few more questions.
I'll
It's
take a few more. I mean, yeah, sure. Yeah,
okay. All right,
please. I
let's
don't
do
want to
this.
leave people. Yes, of course.
Okay, let's do this. Okay, so Christy asks, there are publishers who are scam artists, and sometimes people pretend to be agents. How can writers know when someone is scamming them instead of being legit?
Yeah. Someone commented on my post about this. It wasn't you, Christy, but they were approached by someone who is an agent on social media, and I said, actually, that happens all the time. So don't think immediately that that's a scam. And so my advice would be the same. Like you have to look this person up if you're concerned. I would say an immediate, usually 5 years ago or before that, you would say that if it's a pay-to-play situation, it may be a scam. The fact of the matter is that there are plenty of hybrid publishers now with whom authors are having amazing experiences, but they do have to pay the publisher. So I'm not sure, like, I understand it's gotten more and more confusing, and the best thing to do is to Google them and then maybe ask those questions before you get into any sort of phone conversation that you're concerned about.
Great. If someone's worked with an editor, Sibby asks, should they include that in the query letter?
Yes, I think so, especially if the editor is someone of name. But even if not, it's always going to signal to us that you've really done this with a professional. So I look for that in query letters. I will, I will note that right away. Or likewise, it might be a question mark if someone is writing prescriptive nonfiction and they're an expert who runs a business and they haven't outright said that they have a collaborator working on the book. I'm a little less inclined, because then I'm thinking I'm going to have to take this expert who isn't a trained writer and make this person a writer. So I really think it's a good thing to note.
Great, thank you. CJ asks, my fiction novel is based on a screenplay I wrote, which is receiving awards from national and international film festivals. Should I mention it in the query, even though the script has yet to be picked up and produced?
So it's sort of, again, as agents, we always say, this has interest from several publishers, right? And we try to use that, but I do say use everything you've got. However, it goes into that category of its future tense. It's not existent in the present. So just having folks interested is not really enough to include in this very limited real estate we have. But if you have nothing else, then use it, right? If that's the like best marketing engine that you've got right now, then I'm not going to prevent you from using it.
That could go on the website again, or an article.
Great idea. Great. Or in like your Substack, your profile. Let's take one more, Pearl, because I do have a call next. And now people are like, but
yeah,
there
we've got
is
one final question and then we're
Yeah.
done. Just from earlier. So Erica asks, my pitch is for an epistolary book about creativity, aging, and desire.
Ooh.
It began as emails between myself, a therapist, and my friend, a musician. Comps could be Big Magic, Elizabeth Bishop's letters, and the conversational feeling of podcasts. With all of that in mind, do you have any suggestions about pitching something unusual like this?
Oh, as you read that, I thought this sounds fantastic. It sounds so inventive. And this person, Sarah is the name? Erica is using, again, those comps in a very strategic way. Like it's got the X of Big Magic and it's similar to this, but I'm doing something that's totally unique and different and stand out. And I think epistolary novels are very cool. I mean, it's obviously a niche, but if you go onto Publishers Marketplace, you will find people who've written them. The fact that you're a therapist means you have the credentials, that you're dealing with a subject like desire is a hot topic, always has been, right? It's the timely and the timeless. So all that does to me is intrigue me to want to request it and see if you've executed on this very ambitious pitch.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
That's a great thing, Sarah. I wish you both that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, friends. I invite you to unmute yourselves. Let's give Lucinda a big London Writers Salon round of applause for her time and for her energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So lovely to be with you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Lucinda. We will process this for you. We'll send you the recording along with all the links.
Fabulous. See you all
Have a
again
lovely,
soon.
lovely rest of your day, everyone.
Find the book.
Bye.
Bye-bye.